The CoinWeek Podcast is brought to you by PCGS, the professional coin grading service. Win money and numismatic glory by being among the first to submit W Mint America the Beautiful quarters. The hunt is on for 3 of this year's issues. Visit www.pcgs.com to learn more. This week on the CoinWeek Podcast, Dan Sedwick from Daniel Frank Sedwick comes to talk about the firm's 25th treasure auction, which kicks off later this week. We talk about what's in the sale, the state of the world coin market, and discuss some of my favorite lots. Next on the CoinWeek Podcast. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining me on the CoinWeek Podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
The reason I wanted to have you on was to discuss some key items that appear in your treasure auction catalog. Your next big sale will take place later this week, starting on May 2nd. If you're listening to the podcast, you can go to auction.sedwickcoins.com to register to bid or review all of the lots in the sale. We're only going to have a chance to talk in depth about a few of them, but you definitely want to check it out. So Dan, tell our listeners what you have in store for them this time and which areas you think are the most interesting. And I'll mention a few lots that I picked out so we can sort of give them an in-depth rundown.
Great. Yes. Well, this is like all of our sales. Several months ago, we couldn't tell you at all what was going to be in it. And it's just amazing some of the things that come our way unexpectedly. Some things we know about and some things we actively solicit. But in the end, somehow we always come up with an exciting auction with very new and different things. A lot of the material that we have is along our usual lines, namely from shipwrecks or Latin American. But this time in particular, we have some other outlying areas for us that are also pretty exciting. But the gold ingots and silver ingots that we have, you can't find any other place but our auctions, and those continue to get very strong results. Also Cobs, the earliest form of coinage from the New World, those are always a very strong area for us, and we've got great representation there. In general world and gold and silver coins, like I say, some very exciting Latin American rarities, especially in the gold early Republican material. But this time we've also incorporated coin jewelry, which is kind of another exclusive in our auctions that we started a couple auctions ago after a few of our jewelry clients lost their businesses in various hurricanes. And from that was the beginning of what has been kind of a successful new area in our auction. But we've also made inroads in the area of metals. Surprisingly, the metals collectors in the Latin American area just were not finding enough material in the other auctions, so we took the step to start offering that in a larger form, and it's burgeoned into metals of other areas as well. In this particular sale, we have a very nice group of Admiral Vernon metals that are very popular. Then also there's a 1687 Great Britain medal that commemorates the salvage of a shipwreck in the Caribbean by Sir William Phipps. That's always a very exciting thing and has a nice tie-in to what we do. In the world silver coins, I was going to mention a couple of things in a general way. One is that we have a collection of West Indies copper coins, countermarked, generally French material. That's kind of a first for us, at least in terms of a big group. And so far, the bidding has been pretty strong in that area. And then also a very significant thing that is new to us is a significant collection of Indian coins, including some 1945 original proof coins, a denomination set that come with the original envelopes from the mint where they were made. inside these envelopes are even the original tissue paper that was that surrounded the coins to make sure they didn't get too toned. But they did tone I guess they were taken out of their tissue, and the toning on these coins is just beautiful. They're all slabbed with PCGS and proof 65, and for 3 of them, and the last one is proof 64. Very important coins, and like I say, not something that people will normally find in our auctions, but because the way the internet is today, we have attracted top Indian buyers already with these pieces, and so far the feedback has been quite positive that these are very unusual finds in the world coin market, and exciting coins. And then, of course, we have artifacts as always, both from shipwrecks and not. What's interesting this time is there are some gold chains and just the usual material, cross-section of material. We have quite a lot of original Debray engravings from the 1500s, early 1600s that are just beautiful. They were hand-colored. Generally, these are taken out of large books that were kind of like, I don't want to say comic books of their times, but they were the chronicle. This was, of course, they had no photos, so people back then, if they wanted to know what was going on in the Americas and what all this discovery period was like, they had one of these books and they saw these pictures and they saw illustrations of at least what the Europeans were thought or were led to believe the Indians looked like, and what the conquistadors were doing. So we have ships and men in armor and sometimes even body parts being cut off, and just very graphic and detailed and beautiful pieces. So in addition to that, we have quite a few early maps that are hand-colored. Just a very wide-ranging auction, a lot of variety, a lot of excitement throughout, and we can't wait to see what the live bidding does here. There's going to be quite a lot of action, I think.
So, Dan, one of the lots I like in the sale is lot number 80. This is an 8 escudos gold coin from Argentina, dated 1832. It is the 1832 over 1p from the La Rioja Mint, and it's from the collection of George Gunn III, a prominent world coin collector and sports executive. The coin is graded MS62 by NGC. There have been a few of these that have come in the auction the last decade or so. One came to market recently at the Newman sale. That coin was graded the same as this one, but I've reviewed both of these coins, and I think that I like this example a little bit more in terms of strike and eye appeal. I think I give it a slight edge over the Newman coin.
Right. I mean, in coins like this, you have several things going on, and you can't just look at grade. And that's something I'm quite used to with the early material that preceded the Republics. You have to look at everything the way the coin was struck. And this is just an exemplary piece in that regard. A lot better detail, nicer surfaces and luster. It's a beautiful coin, and it's not just because of the grade.
And this is a hot area of the market right now, 19th century Central American, South American coinage, especially the gold coins. Most of the countries that is the case, and Argentina is probably one of the strongest. I think that partially has to do with the design and the symbolism, and then also has to do with the political history of that time, and just a very important period all around. But Argentina, from a very early period, had very strong numismatic habits, if you will, and it's reflected in a coin like this. The last time this exact coin appeared at auction was in 2007. So this is a coin that has it all, in my opinion. It's a beautiful design. It's historically important. It's numismatically rare, conditionally rare. This is the kind of opportunity that only comes around every once in a while. So if you're a specialist collector, this is definitely a lot you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, certainly in this quality, that's the case. And the popularity is not just due to the date or the quality, but just the type itself. And there are big gaps in time periods if you want to collect all of the early types. And what's neat about this one here, it shows the overdate clearly, and apparently there is no evidence that there was the clean date, 1832, without the overdate. Just a lot going on for this coin, really, and it's been popular already. Already has several bids.
Another 19th century coin that I like is Lot 107, a 10 peso Popayan, and this is an extremely rare coin. Only 4 are known. This example is graded AU 58 by PCGS and is the finest in the PCGS census. This coin is called AU, but it is extremely gemmy. It has a nice, attractive surface, hints of color in the inscriptions. One of the things I love about this design is it has that hand-done primitive look to it. Although the effigy is beautiful, the lettering, the stars, those devices still are rustic. It doesn't look like a mass-produced coin, and I think it's a coin that just really speaks to me. If you like 18th, 19th century non-quote-unquote modern-looking coins, this is a great coin.
Yes, a very cool coin, and for me, personally interesting as well, for different reasons. Kind of a strange reason is the fact that as a kid, I always collected the half-dollar silver coins of Colombia, and the ones that I could never get were the Popayan pieces, just because, well, number one, because they were quite rare in silver, and number two, because they were always so crude that you could never get one that looked nice enough that, or I couldn't get one that I would want to own. And this coin has the same design. This is, as a 10 pesos, it was the half of the, duro size, half of the 20 pesos. Very similar in that regard then to the half pesos, the half pesos and 50 centavos. And very crude, a coin like this, if it had been circulated, much, the crudeness would just kind of come across, as, ugliness. But when it's high grade like this, it's a totally different story. You see what else is there. You see what things are punched over. And despite all that, this is actually a very well struck example. If you look at all of the devices that are on the coin, the details are all there. And granted, the edges are crude and all of the over punchings make for a crude coin. But when you have all the details visible and sharp and a nice lustrous background, really makes for a pretty piece overall.
I was actually at the New York International last year when Stax Bowers offered the Eldorado collection. That sale was exciting. It went well into the night. The prices were off the charts. There were coins and paper money items from that sale that just never come to market. And in some cases, I think that catalog may have presented collectors with their first chance to see color photographs of some of this material. And I reiterate, this area of the market is unbelievably important, and the objects are much scarcer than people realize. And the prices that these coins realize at auction, which I assume, we're seeing strong prices now, but compared to U.S. coins, if these were coins that were made by the U.S. Mint and there were only 4 known, you can't even equate the prices that would be realized at auction for the finest known of 4 known. So, when you want to talk about where are the opportunities in the numismatic marketplace, if you're looking for an angle, you should look for these opportunities in world coins, and the coinage of the Americas is a great place to start.
Right, and this is a bit superior to the Eldorado specimen, but for all intents and purposes, the Eldorado specimen was the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and now this is even more so. Oddly enough, we did offer one of this date, one of the 4 known we offered in 2012. It's just a lot of this material comes to us. We're very specialized in this market. And what's odd to me is that my father's collection, which we sold a number of years ago, that was a very strong Colombian Republic collection, and this was a coin that he never owned. And I would like to think that he would be pretty proud that we're offering the nicest one now. And then, of course, the last one to talk about is the Banco de la República example. That's the one that's plated in the Restrepo reference, and that rounds out the sum total of known examples. This is the only one that's, or this is the two are slabbed by PCGS, none are slabbed by NGC. This is just the best one known.
Your company is one of the most recognized sellers of Cobs and primitive coinage of the Western Hemisphere. One of the most exciting Cobs that you are offering is lot number 64. This is a 2 escudos from 1617. It comes by way of the Atocha Shipwreck. I think this coin is important and historic, and it looks great. The thing about Cobs is each one of them is unique, more or less. But what can you tell me about this piece? What would make it ideal for a sophisticated collector? And in general, what is the sort of the strength of the Cob market at the present time?
Well, to answer your first question, the biggest aspect of this coin by far is simply that it came from the Atocha. And that, of course, is a very popular shipwreck, but if you examine the population of coins found from the Atocha, really just a small handful were gold Cobs. It was a very early period. Generally, the New World mints weren't making gold Cobs at that point. It was just silver, with the exception of some very nascent strikings from Colombia, which are also, very expensive and important. But the key for an Atocha coin, Atocha gold Cob, is to have all the proper certification, and to have a good clean pedigree. Because these are actually, the coins themselves are not rare. In our own auction, you'll see plenty of other examples that are very similar that don't come from the Atocha. So we always make a point to have a very clean line of pedigree and certification going back to Mel Fisher himself on any Atocha gold Cobs, and this is no exception. And what's also remarkable about this particular example is that it shows a clear date of 1617. Not too unusual, certainly in a logical date range for the Atocha, and not a rare date necessarily. But to find a gold Cob from the Atocha with full certification and to have a date visible on the coin, that just kind of puts it over the top. Now, the other question that you asked was, how's the gold Cob market in general? It continues to be very strong, and where it has always exceeded expectations, if you will, is in shipwreck gold Cobs. It's easy to kind of equate the two as being the same, but there are plenty of gold Cobs that didn't come from shipwrecks, as I'm explaining here, with the difference between an Atocha gold Cob and one that did not come from the Atocha. But most of the gold Cobs that we sell do come from the 1715 fleet, for example, and we have some really choice pieces in this auction as usual. And we just keep seeing the prices on those coins go up and up. Maybe it's because of the popularity of the shipwreck. Maybe it's the fact that shipwreck gold coins in general are of higher quality and in much better state of preservation than circulated gold coins. But then there's also the factor that they're beautiful coins. They're rustic, they're historical, and if it weren't for the presence of coins found on shipwrecks, these coins would virtually not exist. They would be uncollectably rare. So we have a lot to thank for in terms of what shipwrecks have done to the coin market. I've watched it grow from kind of a bit of a curiosity to now a very important numismatic area, and it's rewarding for me to see that.
Well, again, I can't help it, but, understanding the way the U.S. coin market operates, I've been a Red Book contributor for several years. Much of the rarity and condition has already been priced into coins, and because, like in the ultra high end of the market, you see, a finite number of collectors that I think what we've seen is sort of very sophisticated gap between the finest known and sort of the run-of-the-mill examples. When you talk about world coins, to me, this is where all of the bargains are, and I can't oversell the importance of coins that were struck under Spanish influence in the Western Hemisphere, in the century or so before the American Revolution. These coins were struck from the mineral wealth that was extracted by the European powers for their use. They were extracted, primitive coins were made, or ingots, and then they were shipped to Europe to be melted down and turned into European money. And this is the reason why the Europeans spent so much manpower and effort to project their power and influence over the Americas. So these coins truly are the beginning of the story of what would become the United States.
I totally agree. And the only reason these aren't more expensive is because with U.S. coins, you may have 300,000 collectors at any given moment. And with these coins, it's maybe more like 3,000 collectors. And that 2 orders of magnitude there will make a difference in price, but it's growing. I can honestly say the number of people interested in the early pre-U.S. coinage of the Americas has been going up steadily.
The Atocha obviously goes down 1622. It seems like it was a really horrible year for seafarers, but a great year for collectors. Another ship to go down in 1622 is the Santa Margarita, and Lot 197 is a beautiful gold bar that was recovered from the Santa Margarita in 1980 by Mel Fisher. What can you tell me about this object?
Well, first of all, this is our specialty. I don't know of any other company that sells as many shipwreck ingots as we do. I think that a lot of that is expertise and experience because these aren't coins, after all, and you can't go to a reference book and say, yeah, this is die W or something. You have to just have the experience to know what is expected on an ingot and what makes sense. And then, the way they were made, it was a very temporary situation. So they weren't trying to make, like coins are, they weren't trying to make something that is beautiful and presentable to the public. These were a quick and easy way to transport gold in this case. Then silver was a similar situation. So the markings on these pieces were rather haphazard. They had meaning and were important, but sometimes you'll see them overlapped on each other, or they are stamped in places that are very uneven on the piece. And then, of course, you have the whole aspect that most of these bars, the gold bars that is, were cut down. There's a lot of value in one of these, what we call finger bars. They really are more like cigars or even longer than that, but that was the shape. And so much value was concentrated in one place that invariably accounts had to be settled by breaking these bars apart. And in the early years, that was also a form of currency, because if you broke off a piece that had the finest stamped on it, then preferably the tax stamp as well, then you could prove that this was just like coinage in the aspect that it had been taxed and was proper and could circulate. What you didn't know, obviously, was, at least on the face of it, what the weight was, and not everyone carried a scale around with him. So a little bit impractical, and obviously the Spanish crown did replace those pieces, which the term for it is oro corriente, meaning basically circulating gold. And that was replaced with coins in short order. But as we see on the Atocha and Santa Margarita in 1622, they were still cutting up pieces of gold bars and doing that. But what's left, the bigger pieces like we have in this auction, usually have a multitude of cool stamps on them. And you'll see a fineness stamp and you'll see tax stamps. What I like about this particular piece from the Santa Margarita is that the cartouche, as we call it, which generally refers to the mine or the owner or both, says Fernand Alonso. Very clearly, these are names and not places. So it's cool to see that the owner's name, basically the one who owned the mine and owned this ingot, owned the gold, is right there on the coin. I mean, on the ingot. It's like having your own name punched into a piece that you made. A lot of ways that is very uncoin-like, but has the same kind of appeal. And then lastly, I would say that the fact that the back of the bar is stamped with a very early Mel Fisher Treasure Salvers seal is important as well. It indicates that this was one of the finds made well before the mother lode of the Atocha was found. And the Mel Fisher's involvement on the Santa Margarita goes back farther, and he was the material that they found was spread pretty thin among investors, and you very rarely see these pieces. It's and this is probably the clearest example of that I've seen. very important piece when it comes to shipwreck ingots.
And it's important to be said that these were essentially meant to be gold in its temporary state. Had these gold ingots made it to their intended destination, we would not have these today as gold bars. They would have been melted down. So the reason we can study and collect these is because the ship didn't make it and because of the technology that was brought to bear to recover this material from the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly. And I say that every day to people who ask me about these things. It's, once again, by virtue of shipwreck salvage, we have such an enriching part of collectible in our area with these pieces. And it's just, I think that people should pay more attention to that and realize the history behind this. You know, and something that I find very interesting is, you know, a number of years ago, my colleague and partner wrote a book about the Baga bars. We have a number of those in this sale as well, and those are ingots that were made in the early 1500s during the conquest of Mexico. And when my colleague wrote the book, he kind of put two worlds together. He got in touch with people who were researchers and academics in the Mesoamerican world. They knew about this material. They knew that this type of ingot existed, very impure mixes with copper and so forth. But they had no idea that these pieces actually ever survived. They had no clue at all. And it's only through the numismatic field and the shipwreck salvage field that we have actual examples. And that was a case where known academic history finally met up with numismatic or shipwreck history, and two worlds met, and it was like nothing else that I've ever seen.
And the amazing thing is, these are not esoteric items that you can only read about in an academic book or see every now and then when you go to a museum. These are collectibles, a way for us to study, appreciate, and enjoy seeing this part of numismatic history and to hold these objects in our hands. So these have tremendous historical and economic value, but as a collector, you know, having something like this would just be a centerpiece. It would be a conversation starter. It would be an object unlike anything else in your collection.
Exactly.
And I'm excited to see how the auction plays out. Of course, I think that with the material that you have sold and the prices that these objects have realized over the course of the past few years, that this sector of the market that you focus on continues to grow, in a large part because of your efforts and your scholarship and the scholarship of your team. With more books and guides and reference material coming out about this area of the numismatic hobby, I think collectors today have a chance to better engage with this material, and we have, because of that, an even deeper appreciation for the people, the places, and the cultures that gave birth to these pieces. So I enjoy looking through the lots that you present in your treasure auction catalog. You always offer something that I haven't seen before. The same can't be said about your run-of-the-mill auction. And I thank you again for coming on to talk with me about it today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. And remember, you can download all 110 episodes of the award-winning CoinWeek Podcast for free from the iTunes Store or stream it online on our YouTube channel. For CoinWeek, I'm editor Charles Morgan. Until next time, happy collecting.